And good evening to the SHRs joining us at the SHR at Home webinar tonight. And also to our colleagues from SANParks and all our friends of the SHRs, evening to you all. Evening, Ray, welcome to switch on your video. I'm just giving Ray a chance just to get his video on before I carry on. Thank you, Ray. Right, our webinar tonight is unique, not only of the topic we are sharing tonight, but also as we will be sharing the platform with our colleagues from SANParks. It is a privilege to introduce Ray Takuli of SANParks to say a few words before starting the webinar. Ray is the acting head of communications at SANParks. Welcome, Ray, and over to you.
Francois, good evening, and good evening to everybody. I must also send a special greeting to Dr. Alison Kock, my colleague, who is going to be giving us a talk tonight. And we really welcome this opportunity. As you might know, that we're living in the fourth industrial revolution times. We're living in the nationwide lockdown times, with COVID-19 being with us. So this is the only way that we are going to be really, seeing each other. We used to have a session once a year, at least, in Kruger, where we meet, physically as SHRs, as honorary rangers, as SANParks, and we discussed issues. But with what we have now, we really have to resort to these beautiful platforms. So thank you very much to honorary rangers again for really coming to the party and ensuring that tonight we are meeting and we are talking about what matters most. Environment, still remains one of our key things that we really have to really look up to. So I think as we go about, as we improve in these platforms, we'll try and get schools, we'll try and get universities to also form part of this beautiful community of people that are really meeting for one purpose, one cause, which is really taking care of the environment. But thank you very much, and to my colleague Alison, all the best with your talk, and we will be listening quite attentively. Thank you very much, Francois.
Thank you, Ray. Much appreciate, and thank you for the kind words. Looking forward to share much more in future with SANParks as a partner. Now let us get to the topic of tonight. You're welcome to switch on your video now, Dr. Alison.
Hi, good evening, Francois.
Thank you. Thanks for that. At least I had to search through all the pages just to find you, but at least I've got you. Right. So very welcome. And just as an introduction on my side, Dr. Alison Kock's topic tonight, managing South African marine protected areas. If sharks, penguins, seahorses, and killer whales grab your attention, you are now in the right space. Hosted in partnership with South African National Parks, our marine national parks, and the conservation of our big five in the marine world. Dr. Alison Kock is a marine biologist with SANParks, based at the Cape Research Centre. Perhaps better known for her work on shark conservation, Alison is passionate about all things marine. She will share the fascinating stories of marine creatures and ecosystems, the threats that they face, and the research and management of opportunities to contribute to the conservation in marine protected areas managed by SANParks. Dr. Alison is a marine biologist at Cape Research Centre, as I've said, and she's an honorary research associate with the South African Institute of Aquatic Biodiversity. Alison completed her PhD in biological science at the University of Cape Town. Her research interests are broad and include top predator conservation, particularly of coastal sharks, and evaluating the effectiveness of marine protected areas. She currently leads several research and monitoring projects in 4 marine protected areas under the management of SANParks. In 2014, she co-established the Save Our Seas Foundation in Kalk Bay. She currently serves on executive committees of non-profit organizations whose vision is the sustainable coexistence of people and sharks. Alison is committed to ensuring that scientific information is effectively used in management and policies. She serves on several national working groups. Alison is qualified both captain and rescue diver and loves exploring wild open spaces on land and sea. She's happiest when she's wearing gumboots on a boat at sea, surrounded by sharks. Welcome, Alison. Welcome to, hand over to you, and I'll tell you when the presentation shows.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Francois. Thank you very much to all the SANParks honorary rangers and to SANParks for inviting me here today. I'm going to get my screen up so I can share it with you.
Right, now we just need it in presentation mode, then we're all good.
Okay. I did it right the first time we were doing the practices, and now, of course, the buttons are all in the different area. Okay, I'm fine.
just above your pointer.
There we go. Is it showing now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much once again for inviting me here today, and thank you to everybody that's tuning in this evening from far and wide. And I really wish that I could see you in person, but for now, these platforms will need to do. So before we dive in, I would like you to take 3 deep breaths with me. All right, are you ready? Take a deep breath in and out. In and out. One more, deep breath in and out. Now, did you know that 2 out of those 3 breaths were made possible by the ocean? The ocean connects all of us, and it's responsible for most of the oxygen that we breathe. But the oceans are in deep trouble. Unsustainable fishing, the loss of top predators that keep our ecosystems in check, climate change, which causes changes in ocean currents and water temperatures, resulting in fish migrations, habitat destruction caused by various activities in the ocean, such as bottom trawling or mining activities, invasive alien species that have been brought in by ships and other methods threaten our own endemic species and biodiversity. And pollution is a growing threat, both the kind of pollution that you can see with the naked eye, such as large plastic pollution, discarded fishing gear, but also the unseen pollution that's often hidden and we are still only learning about. And those are through heavy metals, harsh chemicals, and microplastics that increasingly are getting attention. But why should we care? As I've already mentioned, the ocean produces between 50 and 80% of the oxygen that we breathe. It covers more than 70% of this earth. It regulates our climate by storing carbon. It provides food for more than 1 billion people. That's almost a 1/7 of the world's population. It's home to the greatest abundance of life on earth. In South Africa alone, it's estimated that we've got more than 12,000 ocean species, thousands, if not 10,000 more, which are still undiscovered. It's a really important place for recreation for many of us, and also a spiritual place for many people. And it creates many jobs across various industries, including my own field, fishing industry, tourism, life-saving, shipping, mining. And it's a really important shipping and trade route as well. So it provides a lot to us in terms of goods and services. So what is a marine protected area? Well, a marine protected area is one way or one tool that we can use to try and mitigate some of these threats. This is an example of the newly proclaimed Addo Elephant National Park Marine Protected Area. And essentially in South Africa, marine protected areas are designated spaces in the ocean with legal protection and with management plans. In South Africa, we've got marine protected areas that are often zoned in two different ways. The first zone is called a controlled zone, and this controlled zone allows for certain activities. Some of them are extractive, and the restricted zones, on the other hand, don't allow for any extractive activities. So no fishing is allowed, and only very low impact recreational activities are allowed. But what many people forget is that marine protected areas, whether they are controlled or whether they are restricted zonations, usually exclude highly industrialized human activities. These include longlining, trawling, mining activities, and aquaculture. And they are essentially a way that we can try and balance out our economic needs, our social needs, as well as our ecological needs. So marine protected areas have been used all around the world as a way of mitigating these threats. And increasingly, the benefits of these marine protected areas are being shown. They're usually a lot more biodiverse and have more productivity than surrounding ocean areas. They're more resilient to human activities, and they maintain ecosystem services that we depend on them for. They protect critical areas. These include areas that are important for fish, feeding, reproduction, fishery nursery areas, very unique ecosystems that are highly sensitive to human activities. Also, increasingly, they are being shown that they offer benefits to fishing communities and fisheries by providing spillover into the areas that are adjacent to marine protected areas. They protect geological features and processes. They protect cultural values and assets as well. And they also provide opportunities for recreation and tourism. And what's really very interesting is that they also provide a benchmark for us to look at ecosystem health, so that we can actually compare what those areas are outside of the MPAs, how they are faring in terms of human activities and climate change. And they are also really important hubs for education and for science. So in South Africa, we currently have 42 marine protected areas, which cover 5.4% of our ocean space. And in 2019, through Operation Phakisa, 20 new marine protected areas were proclaimed, and these were both coastal ecosystems as well as deep water marine protected areas, which previously had been underrepresented. The Marine Protected Area Network, as we call it, is really a product of a systematic conservation planning exercise by many organizations and scientists and other stakeholders on the ground. And essentially it recognizes and identifies those areas within our EEZ that are the most biodiverse, and they also represent all the different kinds of ecosystems that we have within our ocean space, from the coastal ecosystems to the deep water ecosystems, from mangroves through to coral reefs, through to deep water oceanic environments, and also offering a range of protections for many, many species. And in this network, SANParks is responsible for managing 6 of these marine protected areas. I've highlighted them here on the screen with circles. And if we start on the East Coast, we've got Addo Elephant National Park, We've got Titicaca Marine Protected Area, Table Mountain National Park, and adjacent to that is the Robben Island Marine Protected Area. We've got the marine protected areas of Langebaan and 5 of the islands, particularly seabird colonies in the Langebaan area. And then we've got the Namakwa National Park Marine Protected Area in the Northern Cape. And essentially, these marine protected areas cover a range of habitats. They all have their unique features, and they all have their unique threats and pressures that they face across this landscape. Other managing authorities responsible for managing marine protected areas is the lead agency of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, which SANParks is mandated by, and also other management authorities, Izimvelo in KZN, we've got Cape Nature, some municipalities, Eastern Cape Parks, and these are all organizations that are mandated by the department to manage and look after the marine protected areas. So what I'm going to do now is really showcase these marine protected areas, and my aim tonight is to just give you a touch of what these amazing places do, and the variety of life they conserve and the benefits that they provide. So the Addo Elephant National Park MPA was one of the new MPAs established under Operation Pakisa in 2019. It has the highest number of endemic marine invertebrates and seaweed species in the entire South African coastline. This MPA was an extension of the Bird Island MPA, which is an important seabird colony, and now it's protecting a much wider range of ecosystems, which include the sandy beaches, the rocky shores, reefs, estuaries, and islands. So a huge variety of ecosystem types that are protected by this marine protected area. It also protects the important Sundays estuary, which is an important fish nursery area, and it's really important for the recovery of important lionfish such as Kock as well as Abalone. And of course, it's an incredible place for ecotourism. So well-known, Addo is well-known for its Big 5, but now it can be called the Big 7 because it includes great white sharks as well as whales and many other species of marine life that are readily seen in this protected area. At the moment, I believe killer whales, dolphins, whales, and sharks are encountered on their marine ecotours. It's home to the largest group of Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins. It's got one of the largest remaining African penguin colonies, and is also a really important habitat for endangered Cape gannets. Titicaca National Park, this is our oldest marine protected area in South Africa. It was declared in 1964, and it also contributes to ecotourism, threatened species. It protects biodiversity and ecological processes. It's really important for the cultural heritage along that coastline. Think about those middens along the coast, and those old fish traps. It's really important as a fishery nursery area and really important for research and monitoring. At the moment, a lot of the impacts of climate change on our lionfish is being conducted in this MPA, and it protects 7% of a really important Agulhas bioregion along our coastline. 202 fish are offered species are offered protection. 15 of these are on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. And it's also really important for a variety of invertebrates, seaweeds, cetaceans, and sharks. The Table Mountain National Park Marine Protected Area, declared in 2004. And it is really important because it's an area where you've got an overlap of the warm Agulhas current on the False Bay side of the Table Mountain National Park, and then the really cold Atlantic currents on the Atlantic seaboard side of the current. And in fact, it's almost like you've got two completely different habitats in this marine protected area. It is really important for African penguins. The Boulders African penguin colony is one of the only stable penguin colonies along our coastline. It's also really important for sharks and fish. Abalone and West Coast rock lobster also got areas where they are still abundant along sections of this marine protected area. It's also really important for our national fish, the galjoen. And the monitoring being done by the department actually shows that the restricted areas of this marine protected area are one of the few places that the galjoen is doing really well. It's incredibly important for recreation, diving, surfing, kayaking, boat-based whale watching, shark cage diving, and it's also really got a lot of cultural heritage, fish traps, a lot of wrecks, and also really important fishing for fishing communities. One of our oldest fishing communities in Kock Bay is located in this area. And in this protected area, there are 6 restricted zones, and the rest of the area is a controlled zone allowing for certain fishing activities. This also happens to be the marine protected area in which my octopus teacher was filmed. And if you haven't heard, this is a local documentary made here in Simonstown off Miller's Point, and it's all about a relationship, a special relationship between a man and an octopus. And it really shows that there are secrets that this ocean still holds for us. And this local documentary, also made by good friends of mine, have won an Oscar. And they have raised the profile of our oceans in South Africa to a level which I think will have a lot of positive spin-offs for us. So home of the octopus teacher. Robben Island Marine Protected Area, again, one of our newly declared marine protected areas in 2019. It's adjacent to the Table Mountain National Park Marine Protected Area. It's an incredibly important area for our seabirds, our African penguins, and our bank and our Cape cormorants. It's also established to try and help with the recovery of overexploited species such as the West Coast rock lobster and abalone. And it's also got a lot of cultural importance for South Africa and is a natural heritage and world heritage site. There are a number of endemic fish species occurring in this coastline, and it's also an incredibly important marine protected area for baseline research and monitoring and environmental education. The West Coast Marine Protected Area, declared in 1973. There is the Langebaan Lagoon section of the Marine Protected Area and several seabird colonies, as well as a seal colony. And it's also really important as an estuary. So it protects about 30% of South Africa's salt marshes, which are really important for regulating climate as well, but highly sensitive to human activities. There are 29 fish species and 12 shark species that have been recorded in this marine protected area, and is a really important place for commercially important species such as your white stump-nose, blacktail elf, and soupfin and smoothhound sharks. It's got a diversity of predators, Cape fur seals, gannets, species of dolphin, and several species of sharks as well. And probably one of its most important functions is it is a nursery area for those commercially important fish, and it provides a haven and spillover effect for adjacent areas and for people that depend on this as a livelihood. It's incredibly important for coastal waders and is a really big bird hotspot if you are a bird watcher. And it's also a really important Ramsar site, which is an international recognition for this area. And then last but not least, the sixth marine protected area that SANParks manages is the Namakwa National Park, probably the most remote coastal marine protected area that we have. It's got some of the most pristine beaches along our coastline, and is one of the few places along the west coast that is not affected by mining activities, and also provides access to the coastline in this area. It's also one of the newly declared marine protected areas, and it also has various ecosystem types: sandy beaches, rocky shores. It's got estuaries as well, with linking the terrestrial park to the marine environment. It's hugely productive, so it's not as diverse in the number of species as some of the other marine protected areas, but the biomass certainly makes up for it. And it's got important species like West Coast rock lobster, and also important areas for pelagic fish like sardines and anchovies. It's a nursery habitat for Cape hakes, another very important commercially caught fish, and it's an area that is growing in being popular for tourism. More and more people are wanting to experience those pristine beaches and a little bit more remoteness along our coast. It's also incredibly important for providing baseline information on how mining, harvesting, and climate change is affecting some of our ecosystems. So what does it take to manage marine protected areas? Now, I'm not a manager. That is a job, I think, for people with thicker skin than that I have. But certainly the management of marine protected areas takes a huge team. And this just shows you an organizational structure of SANParks in terms of where we are mandated, and the different core functions and departments within SANParks. So here you can see that there are the corporate support functions, parks operations, these are the guys on the ground, special investigations, core functions such as conservation services, this is where I sit, tourism developing and marketing, socioeconomic development, and other support functions. So there are lots and lots of moving parts in terms of managing protected areas, specifically marine protected areas. There are many people that work incredibly hard behind the scenes, and what I absolutely love about it is that there are so many people within SANParks that share the same passion and goals for trying to conserve our oceans and our wildlife living in the oceans. And I really just wanted to show you this because it's important to understand that there are various divisions and departments all working together in various ways to try and effectively manage our protected area estate. I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail with some of those units. So for the guys that you'll often see when you're visiting the park, our guys on the ground, our rangers, our law enforcement, and their role really is to maintain visible policing, They have the tough job of law enforcement, anti-poaching activities, but that's not all that they do. They have to organize joint operations. These often involve other governmental organizations, such as the Department, a Special Investigations Unit, our South African Police Services, and they are part of a what's called an Operation Pakisa Lab, essentially trying to improve the law enforcement and compliance around our marine protected areas. But they wear many hats, and they're also responsible for permitting, maintenance of infrastructure. So in Langebaan, for example, the marker buoys, stormwater outfalls in garden route. They also have to do environmental education, stakeholder engagement across a range of different organizations, individuals, interested parties. Environmental monitoring, we also expect of them, and we often join them on that. And then also they're involved in a lot of training, upskilling themselves and their staff. So really lots of roles, lots of responsibilities. It's not an easy job. Scientific services falls under our conservation services division. And essentially, we support parks with evidence-based information for decision-making, for effective decision-making. We conduct monitoring and research in our marine protected areas, and we're that face between science and management. It's a role that I really enjoy. I like to see science that is applied. I like to see it used in applied to management, into adaptive management, and I really like to see it in action. And part of our role is also to facilitate other research and monitoring in our marine protected areas. And currently we've got 42 registered research projects across our 6 marine protected areas. We also comment on environmental impact assessments. So our marine protected areas are often adjacent to human activities, and we often get inquiries for developments, mining activities, aquaculture activities, and we input and comment into how those may or may not impact the marine protected area and its wildlife. We serve a national scientific working groups and national working groups so that we can play a much larger role in our ocean policies and really provide information from the ground up through to senior management and to policy. And we're also involved in science communication. So science doesn't help anybody when it's stuck in a scientific paper, as much as it is quite a hard job to write scientific papers. If nobody reads them, then I feel we haven't done our job. So science communication is really important. And then of course, we all get involved in admin. So I really just want to just showcase some of the long-term monitoring projects that we have on the go. Our long-term monitoring to investigate and keep tabs on the rocky shores. We've got rocky shores across all of our marine protected areas, and we are part of a national monitoring program which monitors climate change, the effects of harvesting, the effects of pollution, alien invasive species on our rocky shores. And this is a collaboration with our Department Oceans and Coasts, with SION, as well as with the department from the Northern Cape. And essentially, this is the part of the job that I absolutely love, and it involves going out into the field and often working with our rangers, working with our partners and collaborators, and getting our hands dirty. And essentially, we have transects that we have permanently put in place and representatives of our marine protected area, and we monitor the impacts of these different human activities by monitoring key species such as limpets, various species of limpets on our seashore, and also in early monitoring system for alien invasive species. How are these communities on our rocky shores possibly changing by harvesting? And a lot of the monitoring to date and research to date on our rocky shores has shown that those restricted areas where no harvesting allowed is really very effective, and the communities and the health of these ecosystems are a lot better than those areas that are not afforded the same protection. And then my colleagues in the Garden Route National Park, there's a lot of monitoring projects, but one of the projects that is really exciting is monitoring the abundance and the distribution of the endangered Neisner seahorse in the Swartvlei estuary. And essentially what the objective of this monitoring is to maintain a viable population of this threatened species. It's to estimate the population size, to understand the morphometrics. These are the body dimensions of the species. What are the causes of population fluctuations? And what's especially exciting is that it's a citizen science project too. So often when the estuary mouth is breached, there's washout of these Neisner seahorses, and the community is asked to get involved to help locate any that have washed ashore. And it's a fantastic example of SANParks working with our honorary rangers as well as with the community and citizens on the ground. So if you are in the Garden Route area, this is a project that you are able to get involved in. Then another project that we have is long-term monitoring of our fish, inshore fish communities, including our sharks. And essentially what we need to try and do, because of constraints in terms of funding and costs and capacity, we try and use methods that answer a number of questions that we have, that monitor a number of impacts. And one such method is called BRUVs, or Baited Remote Underwater Video Systems. And essentially these are low-cost cameras that we deploy on the sea floor for an hour at a time, and we then record the species that are attracted to a small bait canister attached to the camera. And we are using these BRUV systems across our marine protected areas, and we're trying to understand how fishing specifically impacts the community structure, as well as the abundance and diversity of these threatened species, and also the commercially important species as well. And then in addition to long-term monitoring, we also conduct shorter research projects. And this is just one example. It's a reassessment of the biodiversity and the status of marine resources in the Table Mountain National Park marine protected area. It's an externally funded project. A lot of our research and monitoring is co-funded, and this is funded by the Table Mountain Fund. And essentially over the last 2 years, we have conducted more than 250 scuba counts. We've counted the invertebrates like abalone, rock lobster, as well as the various fish species. Over 15,000 fish and shark species were counted in these transects that we did. We also simultaneously deployed these baited remote underwater systems to try and get a better understanding of which method is most effective. And currently we are busy with the analysis. This is the first time that a reassessment of the state of biodiversity has occurred since proclamation in 2004. We've produced a full species list and a state of knowledge report as well. And moving on to looking at some of the challenges with marine protected areas. One of the biggest challenges, and I was actually asked this in an interview by a news reporter following up on the My Octopus Teacher documentary, and that is this connection of people to the sea. The sea is something that most people will only ever see the surface of. Very rarely do people actually get to see what's underneath. And because of that, it's very difficult for a lot of people to form a connection with the sea. So stories like My Octopus Teacher really do that. They try and show people that might not get to experience that firsthand about special connections that can be made with the ocean. But our marine protected areas face many challenges, and managing marine protected areas have many challenges that they share with terrestrial protected areas, but they're also quite different to terrestrial protected areas. We've got large societal issues such as poverty in South Africa. And, you know, we really need to try and balance the social needs and the economic needs that we have with our ecological needs. And this is a lot easier said than done. Our marine resources are governed by different laws and regulations, even within a marine protected area. And this can be quite challenging to manage. There's also overlap with multiple jurisdictions, different management partners, different responsibilities. And so this remains an ongoing challenge for managing marine protected areas. There's often multiple users, all the way from small-scale fishing to commercial fishing to recreation and ecotourism. So multiple uses, and there's no fences. Nothing to say that a oil spill, for example, will stop at the boundary of a marine protected area. There are multiple threats, all the way from climate change, which affects all of the marine protected areas, to specific pressures for each marine protected area. Unsustainable fishing, the threat of oil spills, pollution, some mining activities. These are all important industries and important for our economy and important for livelihoods, but we do need to try and balance these out with our ecological needs as well. Often marine protected areas mean that there is a loss of access to fishing grounds, and this can be really challenging in getting buy-in from communities for marine protected areas, and then also making sure that those benefits are shared equally. And then a lack of funding and limited capacity is often one of the challenges that we face. But even though we have so many challenges in marine protected areas, I think there are even more opportunities for managing marine protected areas. And some of those opportunities really involve collaboration. Collaboration is absolutely key across government agencies, with nonprofit organizations, different industries, the fishing communities, the tourism communities, and then using new technology, just like, you know, getting used to doing a presentation on Zoom where I can't see anybody. You know, technology is able to help us with surveillance, communication, and there's so many ways that we can embrace technology to help us better manage our marine protected areas. And then we need to continue to do the research and the work to demonstrate and communicate the benefits of marine protected areas, specifically to adjacent stakeholders and communities to marine protected areas. We have to ensure that the benefits from these marine protected areas are equitable. We need to share data, we need to share information, we need to harness business in the private sector, and we need to look for long-term funding for our marine protected areas, for our governance, for our monitoring, for our research, and we need to form these partnerships to be able to do that. And again, I mentioned collaboration. It is absolutely essential for us to be able to achieve anything that we do in terms of managing our MPAs. So how can each of us make a difference? So this is a photograph that I took. It's adjacent to the Namakwa National Park MPA. It's a mining site, and it's also a site of one of our long-term monitoring projects in collaboration with the Oceans and Coasts Department. And what you're looking at here is, in front is our collaborative team, and this was the location of one of our long-term monitoring sites outside of the marine protected area. It's really important to monitor within the marine protected area, but also outside, to understand how the changes are resulting in different impacts. And essentially this monitoring site was completely covered by sand that had been spilled over from mining activities. And I use this photograph not to demonize mining. As I've said, industries are important, but we need to balance out our needs for our economy and for our environment. And sometimes, if you like me, the threats and the environmental degradation can get so overwhelming that it doesn't really feel like individuals can make a difference. You know, I often question, you know, what are we doing to really make a positive change? Are we making a positive change? What is that? How is it benefiting people? And it can really get quite overwhelming. And the way I deal with it is I look at protected areas as a way to balance out those needs and to really save these spaces that are still quite natural and still have healthy ecosystems and an abundance of wildlife, and protect these spaces and really try to not get bogged down by these very big impacts and those effects that they can have on you. And then real tangible things that each one of us can do, and they're often underestimated, but our buying power, choosing sustainable seafood, for example. Whenever you go into a restaurant, whenever you go into a supermarket, look for sustainable fish sources, and then try and reduce as much waste as possible. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Be aware of what you throw down the drain. You know, all drains lead to the sea. All drains lead to the river, no matter where you are. So anything that you pour down the drain in terms of the detergents you use or the cosmetics you use eventually leads out into the ocean. Join a beach cleanup. Not only are they fun and you get to meet really amazing people, but you also get to clean up the beach. And then make sure that you don't buy items that exploit threatened marine life. And then if you can, there are so many organizations that are trying to make a difference. Join a local conservation organization. If you can't donate your time, donate some cash. There's so many different ways that you can get involved and make a difference. And then one of the biggest ways that you have a voice is marine protected areas and protected areas have park management plans, which come under review every 10 years. These are the blueprint of how the park is going to be managed in future. And these are open to stakeholders. So if you are interested in your nearest marine protected area, find out when the next review is and make sure that you have your voice heard and you contribute to the vision of what you want the marine protected area to be. And then lastly, there's so many different citizen science projects that you can get involved with all over the country, many of which involve our marine protected areas. Get them out. One of the ones that is coming up is the City Nature Challenge. If your city is one of those participating cities, make sure to go down to the coast and try and get some of those ocean critters and plants on. And so lastly, I would just like to thank everybody, SANParks, honorary rangers, all the rangers on the ground, you know, the managers, the investigators, scientists, friends, family, everybody listening tonight, everybody trying to make a difference for our oceans. Thank you, and thank you for listening. And if you have, if you want more information, our website and also the Marine Protected Areas website has got some fantastic information. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Alison. And yes, fascinating, intriguing, and yes, you're quite right. Our oceans are in deep trouble. Wishing you all the best with the research that you're doing and finding collaboration partners and the needed funds to make this all happen. We'll now go across to some of the questions that we've picked up. There was questions in the chat that I've managed to copy over. Sybil from Chumbi Island Coral Park in Zanzibar, Tanzania. So it's not only South Africans listening tonight.
Wow, welcome.
Asking a policy question on, hi Alison, how do you see the chances of South Africa protecting 30% of the ocean space as MPAs based on the 30 by 30 target for 2030, now promoted by the international community and many countries in preparation for the next CBD conference?
Thank you very much, Francois, and thank you so much for that question. These targets in terms of the percentage of ocean protected are set up by the United Nations. And South Africa is one of the founding members of the United Nations, and we've got these targets of 10% and 30%. And some countries are doing really well, and other countries have not made much progress at all. South Africa has made a lot of progress in our marine protected area expansion. However, the challenge of reaching 30% by 2030 is a big one. And I do think we'll make more progress towards that. But one of our challenges, and one of the ones I mentioned in the talk, is ensuring that the benefits of MPAs are communicated to stakeholders. Because at the moment, the marine protected areas do still don't get buy-in, and that's mostly because some people don't share the benefits of them, don't understand the benefits of them. And so I think if there's any chance of South Africa reaching those targets, we have to do a lot more to demonstrate those benefits and to get the buy-in of our communities that are adjacent to our marine protected areas. So I think the will is there, but I think there's a lot of work that's needed in terms of stakeholder engagement before we meaningfully reach that target. We also don't want to reach that target just to tick a box. We want these protected areas to have lasting impacts and not to be what we call paper parks, which are just protection on paper.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. Cornelia is asking, is Agulhas National Park also an MPA? If not, why?
It's not, it hasn't got a marine protected area adjacent to the park yet. It's one of the areas that has been identified as an incredibly important biodiversity hotspot particularly because it's the areas where those two ocean currents meet. Part of establishing marine protected areas is often that's preferable to have a marine protected area adjacent to a national park that assists with the management. And so it is hopefully on the cards in the future, but again, a lot of stakeholder engagement needs to happen. The communities in that area need to be supportive for proclaiming or getting that a marine protected area, but at the moment it isn't.
Thank you, Alison. Then over to the Q&As. Marty, how badly is the sardine population doing? Is this due to the climate change or overfishing, or maybe a bit of both? Is it possible for the population to recover ever, and how long would the estimation time be?
At the moment, our sardine populations are at their, some of the lowest recorded. And this is having impacts for fisheries as well as predators like the African penguin. So the biomass of sardine is incredibly low at the moment. And it is thought that climate change is playing a very large role in that, shifting the sardine population as distribution. And it's also believed that fishing is having some impact on that as well. To what extent is still not very well understood, but it can, the good news is that it can rebound. So given the right environmental conditions, giving sustainable fishing methods, the sardine population could come back very, very quickly because they are a very fast growing, fast reproducing species.
Thank you for that. Then a question from Facebook. Tokozani is asking, how do you strike a balance between social and ecological needs as the surrounding communities are poor, hungry, and fish is one of their main source and food and income?
This is a vital comment and a vital question, and it really is at the core of getting buy-in from our fisheries communities. And we really need to demonstrate the benefit of the marine protected area to them. So increasingly, research is showing that the marine protected areas can offer spillover effects. So, for example, they house the biggest and the most, we call it fecund, the most sort of reproductively active and effective populations. And if we protect some of those fish, they can provide spillover effects to areas that are allowed to be fished in. But it's quite difficult to demonstrate those benefits. The research takes quite long. Some of the marine protected areas still have ongoing exploitation. But yes, we need to demonstrate these benefits. And they really do need to benefit the communities. The communities need to share equitably in those benefits from the marine protected areas. We need to make new opportunities available. For example, ecotourism. You know, ecotourism is a growing area for these spaces. It needs to be a joint sort of operation between managing authorities like SANParks and other government agencies that are involved in social development, economic empowerment, upliftment. So a lot of work needs to still be done.
Thank you. Another question from Facebook. How are MPAs regulated in terms of laws, and what happens to the perpetrators?
So our marine protected areas in South Africa were, in the past, they were regulated by the Marine Living Resources Act. But more recently, they have been repealed from the Marine Living Resources Act. So they've taken out of the Marine Living Resources Act, and they've been put under NEMPA, which is the Protected Areas Act. the Protected Areas Act offers a stronger legislative tool for managing protected areas. So our terrestrial and our marine protected areas are now falling under NEMPA. And the kind of sort of penalties for any transgression depends on what that is. So it could range from a warning all the way through to an arrest. And so it really depends on what the transgression is. But essentially, the main objective for our guys on the ground is visible policing. It's deterrence. We don't want to capture the poaching after the abalone has already been taken out of the ocean. We want to keep it in the ocean. And so SANParks really aims to try and do as much prevention and deterring as possible, because that is, at the end of the day, keeping the resource in the water and not making an arrest once it's already outside of the water.
Thank you. And then we have one from Pete Oxford. I'm a conservationist and marine zoologist living in Betty's Bay with the MPA on my doorstep. And he's asking, how can we pressure for greater protection, as it seems like the Cape Nature area is not doing well?
Yeah, managing protected areas are really challenging, and I think that all of us, whether we're in SANParks or Cape Nature or any other management authority, we always want to do better, and there's always room for improvement. And what I would say is encourage the gentleman to get involved directly with the management authority, see how, what solutions could be brought, how best to support them, and what one can do to help make their jobs a little bit easier. Is it who make sure the right contact numbers are gotten, and then also get involved in the stakeholder engagements through the park planning process, and then also other agencies and non-profit organizations. If there's nothing like that in your area, start something up. Neighborhood watches are increasingly, for example, assisting management authorities with all kinds of reporting and surveillance. So there's a range of things one can do, and if that's not available in your area, then try and find your nearest managing Cape Nature official, and I can assure you that the guys working on the ground share the passion. They're often under-resourced, understaffed, and they are always looking for constructive support. So yeah, try and find those people.
Thank you, Alison. Yes, I think it's a huge task, and as you mentioned earlier, money and resources are probably the biggest culprit of which our perpetrators use to get the better hand of it. Right, Filipina says, we all know that the role that trees play in the production of oxygen, but I was surprised with the amount of oxygen produced by the oceans. Please explain how the oxygen is produced by oceans. Thanks.
So in much the same way, the ocean is full of plants. They're not trees, but they are plants. And so if you think about your kelp forests, and more importantly, there's microscopic plants called phytoplankton. And these essentially are responsible for the production of the oxygen. So underwater trees.
Thank you. That's an easy answer on that one. Then we have a question from Simon. Poaching of kommetjie in Cape Point in the TNP is blatant and every day. What can be done? And there's various references to to poaching, which is not good. Probably not a question on your side who does the research, but probably more on the perpetrator side, and seeing how we can lessen that.
Yes, no, I mean, again, poaching remains one of the biggest challenges that areas face. And I have a bit of a personal story on that. We were doing our fish monitoring using the park rangers boat off Komiki. And we launched from the Komiki site, and while we were deploying our baited remote underwater cameras, it was myself and one of our senior marine rangers, and then also somebody from our environmental crimes investigations unit. And we were on this really small rubber duck, and we were deploying the research equipment as the primary objective. But of course, my colleagues, as I'm deploying the research equipment, they're on the lookout for poaching boats coming in. And I remember that I was just about to deploy the last piece of research equipment, and one of my colleagues called out, "Poaching boat," and I just remember holding on for dear life, holding my cameras, and the boat's just going after, and I watched these guys go into action. And for the next several hours while we were out in the ocean, I think we chased away 5 poaching boats. But we ended our work at about 6 o'clock at night, and as we launched back into Komiki Harbour, the poaching vessels from Hout Bay started coming past. And we'd spent 9 hours on the water, we chased the boats away, and the moment we launched the boat, they knew about it, and the boats from the Hout Bay Harbour started coming to poach again. And so it really demonstrated to me that, you know, we need to start thinking a lot bigger in terms of how we manage our access points for launching boats. And that brings again the multi-jurisdiction, the collaboration that's important, and then also you can imagine how we felt. You know, you're out there the whole day, you're monitoring the resource, you've launched the boat, it's on the trailer, and you're watching the guys come past, and there's nothing you can do. So, you know, we need to start thinking about ways of technology, other ways of monitoring, because the poaching syndicates are huge. They've got huge amounts of funding behind them, and we need to start matching that.
Thank you. I don't think it's something that we're going to solve in 1 or 2 sessions. Then I have a question here. Is it true that the orcas have been traversing the False Bay area more often in recent years? Where do they come from, and how long do they usually stick around?
So I have a whole orca shark talk. Sharks are still one of the main species that I do research on, and I have several PhD students working on white sharks, bronze whaler sharks, and cow sharks. And these 2 orcas in particular, they are specialists in hunting sharks, and we've recorded them hunting white sharks, cow sharks, even bronze whaler sharks now. And when they do that, they don't only kill a few of those sharks and only eat their livers, but the rest of the sharks in the area seem to flee as well. And so the first sighting of this pair of orcas was in 2015. And yes, increasingly they are being sighted in False Bay and Gans Bay in particular, more and more each year. I think they've learned that there is a buffet of different sharks on the menu, and they keep returning year after year to feed on them. And they were most recently seen in False Bay just a few days ago again.
You've answered the questions, because she's also, to blame for the decrease in shark population, and definitely that was the answer.
They are having huge impacts, yes.
Listen, we've got many other questions. I am picking as I'm going, just so that we've got time for another two. And what we'll do is we'll forward the other questions to you on email, and we could answer those on email for those that haven't had a chance to get the questions asked. There's a question on, is drone fishing a silent threat to our marine life?
Drone fishing, for those that don't know about drone fishing, essentially recreational fishermen are using drones to carry out the baits further from shore. So normally one would be limited to the area in which you fish from shore, you know, by how far you could cast. And now with drones, the fishermen can actually take their baits out behind the surf zone into areas which previously had a little bit of refuge. So we are concerned that it's essentially putting more pressure on resources which are already under a lot of strain. And in marine protected areas, drone fishing is not allowed. And I believe there are a lot of discussions on the go within the fishing community about the use of drones as well. But in marine protected areas, we don't allow drone fishing.
Thank you. There was also a question that some of the members are asking if we could attend to that one, and it's another one from Sybil. As there are so many privately protected areas on land in South Africa, is there any room to discuss private sector investment in MPAs? Management effectiveness of these protected areas would be massively enhanced and scaled up.
Look, I think we need to start thinking out the box in many ways. And we need to at least have these discussions and talk about the pros and cons of these kinds of new ways of managing marine protected areas. I think there's a lot of scope for doing things differently, and perhaps even with the pandemic, it's opened up the doors for that. So, for example, with SANParks, you know, our operating budget has been cut tremendously because we don't have the income of tourists at the moment, and we have been encouraged to find you know, ways of raising money for our research, our monitoring, for our anti-poaching equipment, you know, kind of new long-term ways of funding and managing marine protected areas. So I definitely think there's room for discussions around different ways of managing marine protected areas.
Thank you. And then I'm going to do one last question. Neil Malan, he says, what is the impact of increasing coastal urban development adjacent to MPAs in South Africa?
Coastal developments have got, you know, a kind of knock-on effect on our environment. It's not just the initial footprint of that development in terms of altering the coastal space, but in many times it means, you know, sewage or stormwater runoff, you know, those other kinds of activities that are associated with developments, increased use in a particular area. So you know, most definitely there is impact, and you know, on the border of a marine protected area, there's a possibility that those activities extend, because there are no fences, into the marine protected area. And that's one of the really important reasons we need to try and monitor those impacts. It's really, again, comes down to trying to balance out our economic, our social, and our ecological needs, you know. And this is often a very complex process, but those developments most certainly will have consequences for any ocean environment, including a marine protected area, depending on how close they are.
Thank you, Alison. Unfortunately, that is all that we have time for tonight. Thank you very much. The questions that we haven't answered, we will forward on to you, and we could answer those on email.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you once again. And then, because tonight fascinated you, and you would like to either regularly join the SANParks Honorary Rangers webinars, or you want to become a SANPark Honorary Ranger, or you would like to donate towards the different projects that we have within Honorary Rangers. On our screen now is the donate online, as well as scan to donate, as well as the website where you could make your donations to. And we are a volunteer organization. We provide on-the-ground support to SANParks and are their preferred fundraising channel. Funds are raised and allocated to items on a wish list drawn up by SANParks. Wish list items goes directly to where it's needed most. Therefore, if you want to contribute to conservation initiatives, find out more at our website, www.sanparkvolunteers.org. On to next webinar, which is in 2 weeks' time. During May, our webinars will be dedicated to lion behavior and conservation. On the 12th of May, we will be introduced to Sylvester, the wayward lion that famously escaped from Karoo National Park. And then on the 26th of May, we will be joined by Richard Sari, SANParks Section Ranger in the Kruger National Park, who will describe the complexities and opportunities for lion conservation in South Africa. This webinar will be hosted in partnership with SANParks. We wish you all a blessed and healthy time. Until we meet again in 2 weeks, be safe. Thank you once again, Alison, and good night.